Funny, isn't it? And yet, here we are. This is where it all starts. Right here is where we begin to make sense of financial markets. We'll explore the fundamentals. We'll discuss the market players, their goals, their purposes, their most intimate desires. We'll cover some terminology, which will become useful in the rest of the course. So come with me, and I'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. But first, let me share my slides. I'm not actually sharing my slides, they're going to be re-edited in post-production. But I hope you can see them, because this is what is coming up, the financial world map. We'll start with level 1 at the very top, capital markets. We'll discuss what they are, who uses them, and why. And then usually people go from capital markets straight away to financial markets. But as you can see, there's a big volcano on the way, so we can't go straight, we have to take a slight detour. However, on that detour, we'll cover 2 side quests. The first side quest is called debt capital markets, and then the second one is equity capital markets. Once all that is done, we will come back to financial markets and talk about how they are different with capital markets and what are the 4 main types of financial markets. After all that is complete, equipped with all that knowledge, we'll be able to tackle the final boss, which in this case is the financial services industry. So, I hope you're excited. Make yourself comfortable, get yourself a coffee, because the show is about to begin. We'll start at the very top with level 1, capital markets. Let's dig in. Capital markets overview. If you ever watched financial television like Bloomberg or CNBC, there is a very good chance that it looks like this. There's a whole bunch of numbers, red, green, they're going up and down. It's not very clear what the hell is going on. To make things worse, you have a TV presenter who is just talking gibberish. Equity futures pointing to lower yields, down Fed. What on earth are you talking about? If you don't know anything about any of these terms, it can seem very confusing and daunting and complicated, but hopefully with this module and with this course in general, I want to show you that it's actually not that complicated. Once you get a hang of what all these different words mean, you will see that financial markets is relatively simple to understand. No matter how abstract this or that financial product may sound, there is an actual reason why it exists. Somebody out there really needs to use this product. So if we take a look at financial markets as a whole, there is a genuine need why they exist. And that need has absolutely nothing to do with gambling or speculation or getting rich quick. Yes, financial markets can be famous for these things, but that's not why they exist. They exist for a completely different reason. If you imagine financial markets, everything that comes into your mind, the big tall buildings in financial districts, the exchanges, the trading floor, people shouting numbers at each other and it's all crazy, all of that, the entire world of financial markets begins with just 2 entities. Nothing else, just 2 entities give rise to the entire world of financial markets. Entity number 1 and, you guessed it right, entity number 2. What are these entities? Usually people guess things like, well, buyer and seller. Yeah, buyers and sellers, they're part of financial markets, but they're not really the drivers of why they exist. Things like banks, exchanges, again, they're market participants. Supply and demand, well, they're concepts in financial markets. They're very important concepts in finance, but again, it's not what gives rise to financial markets. Let me give you a hint. First one, corporations. So the first entity is corporations, and hopefully you can guess the second one, which is governments. These two are to blame for why we have such big and developed financial markets. Why is that? Well, the reason these two give rise to financial markets is because they have a need. They have a need for No, not speed. Financing. They have a need for financing. I was looking for financing. Why would you say speed? It's a finance course. They have a need for financing. What is financing? In short, financing is money. It's capital. So to do their job well, corporations and governments, they need money. They need money to operate. So how can you actually finance something? In general, there are two ways to finance things. First one is called equity, and equity represents ownership. So you can finance something by selling a stake in whatever asset it is. Or you can finance something using debt. And debt obviously represents borrowing. Let's look at an example. Let's say you want to buy a house, and the price of this house is $300,000. What do? Well, first, you need to save up for a deposit. Let's say that your deposit is $50,000, so you put that towards your purchase. Where does the rest of the money come from? Well, the rest is obviously a mortgage. You borrow some money from the bank and promise to pay it back later. In here, you've used both of the financing methods to buy this house. The deposit represents your equity. So this is how much of the house you actually own. That's your equity stake in the house. The second one is mortgage, and obviously that represents debt. What we would like to explore next is how do you finance a small business or a startup, and we'll compare that with how would you finance a large government or a corporation.